Hello everyone, my name is Sae and welcome to another episode of Sae Sun Studio. This is the fourth and last episode in my series about a year in my garden. Part 1 looked at my gardening philosophy and how I turned what was once in a lawn into a sustainable garden. Part 2 looked at my early summer garden and some of the amazing creatures I found in it. And Part 3 was all about my midsummer garden and the ways I deal with pests. Now join me as I take you to my late summer garden and all the way to winter. I'm going to continue the tour in August when my Phlox is putting on a show. Now Phlox is native to Eastern and Central North America and will bloom consistently from July to September. They come in all different colors, but I inherited these white ones from the previous owner of our house, and they are just so lovely. They're loved by bumblebees, and seeing them fumble around in the large blooms is actually pretty cute. Now, if you notice something yellow next to the Phlox, well, it's Canada Goldenrod, and goldenrods in general are such an undervalued plant. Their notoriety comes because they somewhat look like ragweed, which causes a lot of allergies. But goldenrod pollen is too heavy to be carried by wind and does not cause allergies. What it does cause is a late season feast for pollinators. When all other plants have stopped blooming, they are where the buffet is at. And to be honest, I was surprised to find such a large number of ants on it at one point. But hey, everybody's welcome. This was the year that I really began to appreciate my cutleaf coneflower, also called a green-headed coneflower. Now, something you may not know is that the cone part is actually made up of hundreds of tiny flowers that open up one after another. This means a single bloom will potentially create hundreds of seeds, and you can see the different stages over here. Besides giving a long bloom time and lots of pollen for pollinators, the hundreds of seeds that are produced provide a great source of food for wildlife. I was always surprised by the different pollinators I could see on the cutleaf coneflower, from red-belted bumblebees to western honeybees, as well as a potter wasp. And then there were the ones I couldn't identify. But I also got to see a couple of furrow bees, and these are the solitary bees that make their nest in the ground. But cutleaf is not the only coneflower I have. Two other ones that are really great are the Susans. I'll start with brown-eyed Susan, and this is the one with the smaller blooms that forms multiple stems, and it's almost like a little bouquet, and the bumblebees absolutely love it. Now, some of the pollinators I saw on this were the common eastern plasterer bee, as well as the flower fly, part of the hoverfly family, which is great for eating aphids and pests. And of course, there's a couple different sweat bees, and this one was doing gymnastics as it was rubbing pollen onto its belly. The second Susan I have in my garden is the black-eyed Susan, and you can tell it apart from the brown-eyed one because it has individual blooms on stems and they're much larger. They don't have the rounded petals, but it attracts just as many pollinators. I even spotted an ambush bug a couple of times. Growing right next to it and in similar conditions is a plant you may not know, but I think you should. It's called wingstem. And you wonder how it got its name? Well, when you realize its stems have those flaps that look like wings, well, that makes a lot of sense. It's a wonderful native plant, and the flowers are visited mostly by long-tongued bees, especially bumblebees. And in my opinion, it has the most beautiful seeds of all the plants I grow. They look so lovely and intricate. And I'm not the only one who appreciates those seeds, since the birds also like to munch on them. And speaking about things that birds like, I have to give a shout out to my cup plant, another yellow favorite. It is the tallest plant in my garden, growing to over 2 meters tall. The reason it's called a cup plant is because where the leaves attach to the stem, they form cups that collect rainwater. And I've been told that the insects and birds will come and drink from it, but the closest I saw was this leafhopper. And being a native plant, I actually saw the official Toronto bee, the striped sweat bee, on it a couple of times. Nice one to have. And if you wonder if birds like cup plant seeds, well, one look at those half-eaten seed heads will tell you that they do. Talking about seeds, when I was showing you my milkweed in the last video, I promised that I'd show you the seed pods when they ripened. So late in August, I could see that they were ready. You can tell they're ready because the seam opens and seeds attached to white fluffy hair-like structures are carried away by the wind. If you don't pick them up exactly at the right time, things can get messy and the fluff will get everywhere. Remember what those pods look like, because I have to tell you a story about my mom's neighbor. A couple years ago, she was proudly telling me that she had milkweed climbing on her fence, which is something I'd never heard about. So when I went to check, to my horror, I found that she had highly invasive dog strangling vine. And it was crawling all over the place, and while the seed pods have some superficial resemblance to milkweed, you should get rid of it as soon as you can. On to happier plants, as I want to share another late bloomer that I love, and it's called Blackberry Lily. It used to be the sole species in the genus Bellamcanda until it was recently reclassified as an iris. What I love about it is that it has the most adorable blooms, and then the seed pods ripen and they resemble little blackberries. Growing right next to it is another easy plant. This time it's a grass, Northern Sea Oats. One noteworthy thing is that it has a really strong root system, so it's great for stabilizing slopes and stopping erosion. This grass starts out growing in June and quietly does its thing, but it's when the flat seed heads appear that things get really interesting. The stems arch down and sway in the breeze as it turns into this beautiful coppery look and then this bronze. It is great as a dried bouquet. If you want a pop of color other than yellow in September, I would recommend a beading plant. It gets its name from the fact that the flower spikes are quite flexible and they will stay in the position you bend them in. So it's very good for floral design. Unfortunately, this past fall, most of the blooms on my beading plant never even had a chance to open because of the strange weather. Something that I started growing last year, so a relatively new addition, is Pearly Everlasting. Now, I'd heard about this plant and the elegant blooms it has, so I must admit it was worth all the hype. They start out as simple flowers but develop into these elegant crisp white sculptures that last forever. And it's true that pollinators come in all different shapes and sizes, In this case, what I found visiting it was this cute tiny little spider, kind of munching away. No other plant in my garden makes a statement in the fall like Snowberry Bush, because that's when the berries reach their peak beauty. It's native to all parts of Canada, and the bloom itself actually happens in the spring. When the berries develop, they look like elegant strings of pearl. When the leaves all fall down, the berries shine to their best, and the birds love to eat them. Now, no fall garden is complete without an aster, and it doesn't matter which kind you're growing, but I have Amethyst Aster in my front yard, and it's always buzzing with bees. It will bloom right until the first frost, so keeps on feeding all the pollinators. So it is something that will keep your garden interesting for a long, long time. And the last plant I want to talk to you about is Stonecrop. Now, I've spoken about the low-growing and miniature varieties that I have that bloom earlier in the year. This one is a taller one that forms clumps up to 30 centimeters high. I've planted it as a border for some beds, and over the past 10 years it's pretty much kept its shape. In August, when it starts to bloom, it's a lighter shade of pink, and by September it starts to darken. And it's still quite attractive to all the bees. In early fall, when you need a little pop of color, this actually works really well. By October, when everything else is fading, Stonecrop will turn into a beautiful coppery color. And it goes all the way to November. In November, everybody starts cutting back their garden. My garden work is really not that much because I leave almost everything standing, including the Stonecrop. And it actually looks great, and it stops the snow from drifting. To begin my fall yard work, all 3 hours of it, I wait until most of the leaves have fallen down. I begin by picking up any fallen branches and putting them on my pile of twigs. And that's due to my messy gardening philosophy, where I create piles of twigs where insects can nest and shelter. It's about keeping a healthy insect population within your garden. So I pile them all up over there. The one thing that I absolutely have to do is make sure that I cut back all the iris leaves. And in one of the past episodes, I spoke about my method of controlling the iris borer. It overwinters on foliage and debris around irises. So that is something that I will remove. I'll put it in yard waste bags, and the city will pick it up and compost it. It's gotta be all clean. I actually use all of the fallen leaves right within my own garden. And the way I do that is by raking some directly onto the garden beds, or running the lawnmower over the other ones and mulching them, and then emptying that onto the garden beds. This is great because it adds organic material to the garden beds. It insulates the plants over winter and provides lots of nesting space for insects and shelter material for wildlife. And so everything's where it's supposed to be, and just like that we get our first snow. Well, that concludes my year of gardening, my friends. So remember, if you use plants native to your area And remember some essential practices in making a garden that is welcoming and offers food and shelter to wildlife and insects. You will reap the rewards. If you like this segment, please hit the like button, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and don't forget to click the notification button so you know when a new video has been added. One last thing, if you spot a plant you like, remember, some seeds may be available in my online Etsy store, but only in Canada. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Happy growing, my friends.